Hello, I'm Orlando von Einsiedel, and it's a privilege to be here today with Richard Ladkani. Uh, Richard, I'm looking forward to talking about your thrilling and powerful film. It's a story of an indigenous chief from the Brazilian Amazon who rises from a remote village to the front lines of climate justice. It's an action movie. It's a love story. It's a clarion call for the Amazon, and it's a wake up to all consumers around the world to think about the products we buy and their effects. It's a deeply troubling film, but it's also very inspiring. It's a lot. Um, there's a lot. You managed to pack a lot into 110 minutes or whatever it is. So why don't we start? Tell me how did this all come about? What was the story you first were interested in, and was there a moment when you thought this is a film I've got to tell?
This was a project that started in 2019. I just finished Sea of Shadows, and I was looking at the news back then. I remember in the summer, and you saw on CNN how the Amazon was burning, and there was like so and so many soccer fields per day are being lost in the Amazon, and the whole world started talking about it. And I thought, why am I not feeling like anything like personally? Why don't I feel pain when I see it? It looked dramatic and crazy, but in a way also I felt maybe there's something missing in terms of like a story that could reconnect people like myself to the Amazon so that I can feel what this war, what this fire is all about. And that's how the journey began. And I just thought, maybe there is a way to tell a story that can include like an indigenous, person that we can really connect to that can make us feel why it's so important to preserve the forest in an emotional way. So that started the journey really, where I was like, let's do research. And also I hired a small team of people and I said, can you please help me find out more about the Amazon? Because I'm not an expert at all. I just thought this was something I was deeply interested in. And so we gathered a list of really interesting people that NGOs or journalists or filmmakers told me about who are like active in the Amazon. And on that list happened to be Juma Xipaia. But she was just a name and I could hardly find anything on her, which made me actually very curious. Like, why is this woman on the list, but yet I find nothing? And then I met this one journalist, Eliane Brum, who's very influential in Brazil. And she told me that Juma is a remarkable person, but she's in hiding because she just survived the sixth attempt on her life. And she's actually like totally withdrawn in the forest and doesn't want to talk to anyone. And that spiked my interest even more. So I was like, if there's a way to get a message to her, I would love to talk to her. So Eliane did her magic and set up a call with Juma. Juma agreed to at least take that conversation. And on that very first video call, I remember I knew I had found someone truly special because she has an amazing way of you know connecting with you even through a crappy video connection. She has like poetry in her voice. She tells stories. She's a storyteller, and I could feel so much empathy, so much. I was carried away that I almost cried on that first call,
Mm.
and I was choking up, and I was like, if this woman can do that to me, a seasoned filmmaker, um, who's seen a lot, then imagine what could happen if I would be allowed to follow her on a journey over, months, years that then we didn't know. But one thing also was very clear to me is I wanted her to feel secure, safe, and empowered. So from the beginning, I suggested that this would be a partnership that she would that I would want her to lead the way, that it wouldn't be me coming with any preconceptions of like how do we do this, because I saw her storytelling qualities in that first conversation, and I thought, let me just help you tell your story, and that's how the whole thing began.
I want to ask you a bit more about that relationship of Juma being a producer in a minute, but firstly, to come to that point, Richard. But I agree with you. It's all too easy to see news coverage of the Amazon and feel quite disconnected from it. And I think the film is very effective in drawing you in because of its intimacy with ultimately with Juma and with Hugo. And I think that creates a very powerful empathy bridge in this film and pulls you into those to the issues affecting. the Amazon as a whole, indigenous communities there. Can you talk to me about building that relationship with her? Because there's points where the camera's there that, I mean, you can't get more intimate than, I don't spoiler alert, but having a
Yeah.
child and the camera's
Yeah.
there. So just talk to me about building that relationship.
It was all about trust. She at the beginning she gave me a little bit of trust because I came through Eliane Broom, but I sensed a deep kind of suspicion in general against white people, colonialism, all these wanting something from her. So I felt, and there was also something very interesting. I had to use a translator on that call, um, who was someone that I had suggested, and I felt her discomfort because there's this person that she doesn't even see who's translating, and this person is getting a lot of information. So there's a security risk. And imagine 6 attempts on the life. So basically, anyone could be a threat. And so the first thing I decided to do was learn Portuguese. So I took intense courses, and fortunately, I did speak Spanish, so it wasn't that hard. But I learned Portuguese so I could just get the translator out of the way and make it more about a one-on-one connection. And then it also happened to be that when I met her was the beginning of the pandemic, so that kind of really slowed us down. But I knew I had found my main hero, the person I wanted to make this film with. So I stayed connected to her, and I really wanted this to happen. So we just stayed in touch. We had regular calls. I was like checking in with her, how's it going and everything. And that was actually great to build more of a friendship, of more of a, she also saw my resilience, that I wouldn't give up because of the pandemic, that I kept coming back, that I was trying to raise money for this film, that I was investing my own money, that of my family. I had my parents donate to her institute to kind of keep her going and safe as well, and have her be able to sustain herself. And it was very appreciative that, we had this time. So by the time when I actually finally met her a year and a half later, we already sort of knew each other. And only maybe, I think it was the end of 22, early 23, when actually we had the film, like the budget together to make this film the way I wanted to do it. So we had known each other almost 3 years before we actually started full on production. And we'd been filming on and off, but it was great to have this time. And it was all about trust for Juma, and that's when I started to stay with them, I think I did 20 trips to Brazil. I became part of their household in a way. I wouldn't say family, but I was definitely a close friend, to the point where towards the end of production, I remember shooting an intimate scene in the evening, and I think they had even an argument about him going on a mission, and she didn't want him to go because it was so dangerous. And they simply forgot I was there. I was standing in the bathroom, dark, lights out, shooting from like a dark room, and they literally forgot I was there. And that was the key for this film, is that I became invisible over time. And she once joked where she says, Richard, you're like a table in the corner that you forgot that was even there, like a piece of furniture, like, and I was like, goal achieved, because I wanted it to be as real and as raw as possible so that I could really, hone in on this intimacy and immediacy as well. Yeah.
Richard, you mentioned security and safety during that answer. I want to ask you about that, because there are multiple scenes in the film, but you know, scary men with guns charging into unknown places. Clearly you and the crew were potentially at risk there, but also, as you said, Juma's life. She'd had 6 attempts on her life. Can you talk to me about her safety now,
Yeah.
but also how the precautions that you guys took as a team?
Yeah, that's very important. So from the beginning, when we raised the budget, we had a very big allocation towards security, like really significant. And we were recommended to work with this one guy who works with indigenous people and puts them, like, in case they're threatened, like provides safe houses for them, extraction plans, like has it all figured out, and is very used to working with indigenous communities, so they trust him. So we hired him and his company to mainly keep the production safe and keep Juma and the family safe, and also advise us all throughout the years on how this film could impact her security in a negative way and what we can do to mitigate it. So that was a very, very big, elaborate plan that we implemented. Um, the money we raised was also for the contingency of the film rolling out. So we have a 2-year contingency now that the film is out, that, in case her fame or her, public persona right now becomes an issue, we also have that covered for 2 years, including security, bodyguards, safe houses, cameras, installments, all that stuff. So that was like key for us. And yes, from our side, the production was dangerous at times, and there were, very tense moments. But I always felt like, look, I'm volunteering to be part of this world, so I should deal with it and just make sure we mitigate any risks. But the big attention was on their security, because that was
Yeah.
for us the number one priority, and I think she feels safe and secure.
But just to change topics, to talk about the creative for a little bit. The film does an incredible job of painting the Amazon and its richness and the life there. There's one thing that really struck me with these sort of inversions. There are, guys, some of them blurred with guns that are actually the good guys. There
Yeah.
are black clouds of smoke rising above the Amazon, and that's a good thing. And there's the military wife, but she's more heroic than the actual military guy. Was that something that you were conscious of in making it? Did that just emerge in the edit? Talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
I had no idea what kind of roller coaster ride I would be on in this film. All I knew was Juma is an amazing, very intriguing character. And if I spend time with her, things are going to unfold that will be worthwhile a film, and really take us to the issue of the Amazon and what is happening there.
Mm,
So, for example, I had no idea that she was going to be called into the Ministry of Indigenous People, that this was, and that she would be from activist to like Secretary of State in a new
mm,
government. That, that was like crazy. But then also, I didn't know who her husband was. Her husband, I met him on screen live while shooting in a car. Like we went to the airport, we picked him up, and I just saw this guy, military style, with a big gun, and I was like, what does he do? And when I understood that he works for the government and he's actually fighting the bad
mm.
guys, I thought that is unique because I have never heard that this agency even exists. So I was curious, and I thought, if I would be allowed to go with him on these missions where they raid illegal mining sites of, cartel operated gold mines, I could finally show the devastation that Juma is always talking about, that all the indigenous people are talking about. Because for I just, felt always there's a lot of talk, but I need to deliver the visuals for that so people can feel it. I wanted to emotionally connect. So Hugo, her husband, was a vehicle that I could use to get to these places that are highly dangerous. Juma could never
Mm.
go there. She would just be shot on approach, like that's what they do with indigenous. And but going with him allowed me this opportunity. But the problem was they had one big condition. One is I had to sign a big waiver that in case I die, I'm not going to sue them, because they said it's very dangerous. You're not a trained soldier. And second, they said I have to do it all alone. So there was no crew, no sound man, nothing. I had to, because I was taking the seat of a soldier on that helicopter, and they were down on security because of me, and I needed to kind of take care of myself because they had to make sure the mission was a
Mm.
success and that they stayed safe. So what I witnessed was, for me, breathtaking, because I had seen these images of the Amazon burning, right? And here these guys go, and within like a 20-minute attack, they would put like a whole factory ship on, in flames, ablaze. They would light up excavating machines. They would light up planes that cartels were using on an airfield, and it looked very like menacing. It looked like this is wrong because of the fire, right? And the size of it and the black smoke and everything. And I said to him, but I was consciously aware that this is gonna look bad in maybe in the film. And I said, why don't you just confiscate these planes? Why don't you confiscate the excavators and move them out and put them to good use? And he said, this is the Amazon. We're like 1,000 miles away from the nearest village. And these people are armed and dangerous, and we have to go in and out as fast as we can and destroy the machines that they're using to destroy the Amazon. And the most effective way to destroy them, the quickest, the most effective, is fire. So that's why they use fire. He said it's a limited fire. It never spreads to the Amazon or to the forest. It just takes out these machines that over time would cause insane amount of devastation if put to use over years, right? Whereas one fire with some black smoke is like 1 millionth of the damage that this machine would use if they just. And also they said it's just too dangerous to take these machines out over a long path, because imagine we could be attacked at any moment in time. Like they could just come after us, regroup, and attack us, and it's just not worth the risk. The same with the plane. Who He said, who knows that this plane is not booby trapped, rigged in a way where if we put one of our pilots in that plane to save that plane, what if the plane crashes because we forgot to put in a fuse or something, which they had rigged specifically for it not to be stolen? So basically, that's why we just go in and burn and attack. And it was a learning lesson for me. And it's been explained through like a news, like that's what Ibama does, and that's how they do it. But yeah, it was a bit hard for me as well to understand.
Though I have to say, those scenes are they're extraordinary. I've never seen I've sort of never seen that I guess a state organization take such an active role in trying to combat, the destruction of the Amazon. Just what's hard to grasp, Richard, is how effective that is. I get it in a localized
Yeah.
way how effective it is. It's very effective, but across, the scale of destruction, how effective is that organization is doing in Hugo's work, across Brazil as a whole.
That is actually quite significant because he just sent me the latest statistic about like 2 weeks ago, where the deforestation has dropped by 50% since Lula took office. So over the last 2 years that they've been doing this, 50% down from 11,900 square kilometers of forest destroyed. They're down to 5,700. And it's because of Ibama, because they had been so effective in taking down these mining sites and the excavators and all that, that the cartel is rethinking their strategy of putting more and more money to use. Because an excavator is like $100,000, a ship is $300,000. In one mission that's like 10 days, they destroy over 100 of these machines. It's a lot of money that the cartel is using. And that's why we also wanted to focus on that to some degree, because it's part of the solution. It looks violent, it is, but until big governments come in and find sustainable solutions for the Amazon, they need to do the hard, rough work. And, the one thing I don't wanted to say is that I know these images look really hard, and I think we needed to see that, right? But there was, to be honest, in the edit, there was always the fear of us that these images are overpowering the story, because it was still Juma's story and it's her husband. So he's like, he comes into the story, but he's not the main story. So in a way, it was the balancing of that was the hardest part in the edit, that we needed to cut down on it as much as possible so that it's still relevant, it still matters, but it's also about a family story. Like he's the father of her unborn child, and we wanted to show that it's dangerous what they're doing. She's living a dangerous life, he is living a dangerous life. They're truly worried, and she's often overwhelmed by all of this happening because she knows what he's doing. One time she forgets her child, like she just doesn't pick him up from school because she's so stressed out. Or she sometimes we fear for her baby, because she's so stressed out that again, she felt like something's wrong, right? So we were there in these moments because we wanted to show what it's like to be these eco warriors that are putting their life on the line every day to fight for the greater good, but it comes at a heavy price.
Yeah. Coming back to Juma then, Richard, I want to know how she is, but I also want to know the wider, the indigenous movement in Brazil and the current
Mm.
situation. 2 years of a new government. How are things politically, especially with COP going on as we're talking?
Well, things are really tense right now still. The problem is that the gold price has reached an all-time high. So the illegal mines are flourishing, even though Ibama's coming after them. there is so much like greed for more money. It's worth it to take the risks for these people because the gold price is $4,000 an ounce. When we started, it was $1,500 an ounce. So it's like crazy. And the indigenous, they are fighting because yes, they have power now in the new government, but a lot of laws haven't been passed. A lot of land has not been demarcated because Lula is a politician after all, and he only won by a tiny margin. So he's still fighting the 49% of Bolsonaro people who voted for both is, the right-wing radical. And it's like it's tough. So the indigenous are fighting. They are just a few days ago, they occupied the green zone at COP and they stormed in and they said, this is our land. We need to be heard. It's not these white guys, these politicians that make decisions over us. We are so they are loud, they are active. And what's great is that our film is being run together with a very heavy impact campaign that is like very kind of professionally done through Earth Alliance, Rewild, and the Juma Institute. So the three of them are making sure that our film is being seen by the right people. For example, at COP right now in Belém, we have three screenings. One is on the ship of Greenpeace, another one's in the Blue Zone. So we're really getting the right people to see it. We are talking to as many, law like lawmakers as possible around the world about this, even in the EU, in the US, Brazil. And, just now we were hosted by the Austrian president who wanted to make a statement also for COP, that he wanted to show the film in a beautiful Vienna in Vienna. So it's like we are doing what we can so our film can be used as a tool to bring change because the fight is far from over. This is happening right now. The film is there so we can emotionally connect, but there's so much work to be done by the impact campaign and the people we have involved to really get the film to the right people.
And Richard, how's Juma? Because there's a message at the end of the film that she's left government, she's gone back to her community. How is she doing? And I'm assuming she's working with the film to make the film do some good.
Yeah. She's super active with the film. She's touring with the film. She's been like basically touring for 2 months now, taking the film across the world, which comes at a she's right now in Los Angeles. We were just in New York. Before that, we were in São Paulo showing the film, which is for her also 3,000 miles away from home. We were on the way in LA, San Francisco before. So she's a producer on the film. She's taking it very seriously. It's not just like she's in the film, she's also a producer and she understands what the film can do. And she always says YANUNI is from the territory to the world. And YANUNI is now part of her fight. She decided to make the film so she has a better tool to fight, and she's using that tool. So right after our LA screenings now, she's going back to Belém to have another screening at COP because it's so important. But she just told me recently, which was really moving and sad, is that she had to put her children back into the territory far away, like from the city. They moved back to Altamira, which is where the film begins. But
Mm.
Altamira is still too dangerous. And even though she has family there, it is too dangerous. She can't leave them there unprotected. Because the problem is they could be kidnapped at any moment in time, especially now that she's a public persona. That's what these people do. So she hasn't seen her youngest daughter in like 2 months, and she even missed the first steps that she took, and she will never get that back. And she was choking up when she told me, it's like 2 days ago, I missed that. I have a video of it, but I wasn't there as a mom. So she's sacrificing even now her time and her efforts for the greater good. And that's what I found so moving and so inspiring is that it's a life of struggle, how she says in the film. When she was 15 years old, she says it's going to be a life of struggle. It is a life of struggle. And she's taking it all the way. And I'm very grateful that we're doing this together and that we're still really happily doing this together because it's been a rough 5 years with pandemics and all kinds of issues and problems and the government. But she's happy that she left government because she didn't feel comfortable in the big city. Brasilia is not her home. It's far away. It's 2,000 kilometers from her forest and her people and how she grew up. So she really wanted her kids to grow up again in the territory. even though it comes at a heavy price where she now has to travel and they are in the village, she at least feels they are connected with nature again. And for her personally, this was the right move. And now she can take the fight around the world, not be stuck in Brasilia, but go to all the places, everywhere, and show Yanuni to the world, from the territory to the world. That's what she always wanted.
Richard, thank you for sharing all of that. It's fantastic to hear it, and I wish you luck with the film as it rolls out.
Thank you so much. No, it was a pleasure to talk to you about this, and I hope it goes far. Thank you very much.